We've heard Roger's very forthright and candid and frank views about what's going to happen in the next 12 months, and indeed his observations as to what might happen beyond that. What I've sought to do is to interpret it and try to understand what it means for a state agency. And when I say what I've done, it's actually not just my subjective opinion, because quite frankly, so what? I mean, the one thing about this industry is there is no shortage of people having subjective opinions. In fact, I don't think I've ever known an industry anything quite like it. It's not just it's how forthright people are with their views, where they pontificate about things with complete conviction that they are right. And if I could be asked, which I can't, I'd make a record of some of these predictions that are being made because, well, based on past performance, a lot of them are a joke. So what I prefer to do is to, if ever we are making a recommendation, is to quote a source behind it. What is it that causes us to believe in one thing rather than another? And for 12 years now, we've been carrying out a thing called the Home Moving Trend Survey. And in the last 9 years, we've also added to that a landlord and tenant survey. And we've interviewed, or researched, I should say, 180,000 people over those 12 years. And every one of those 180,000 people were in the process of moving at the point that we surveyed them. So in other words, this wasn't just a survey of the great British public. This was a survey of people who were actively selling or letting or buying or renting at that point in time. And that's relevant because at a point in time, people, as Roger has already alluded to, are behaving differently. If you think about your last move for yourself, would it be fair to say for every one of us, our own last move, and we're in the industry, was fraught for many of us with emotion? And despite the fact that we know things, we advise others, I wonder if it's just me that was told, why don't you just take your own advice? Because it is highly emotionally charged. And actually, the reasons why people make a selection on buying a property or selecting an agent, we'd like to think it's all logical and rational, but a lot of the time it's not. It's based on gut feel, emotion. It can be on the smallest little detail that people make their decisions. So our first source is our surveys, and 180,000 is a pretty substantial sample size, and it's backed up over 12 years of carrying out this data. Now this year we've gone a stage further, and we've actually brought in our good friends at Dataloft, and Sandra Jones is here today from Dataloft, to actually help us to go back and look at the 12 years of data and to unearth a whole wealth of different insights. So we were very much top line looking at things as they came through. Sandra and her team, you always see the Dataloft people, they're the ones with the larger than average heads. If anybody in here's got a larger than average head, good chance they probably work for Dataloft. Because their brains are applying their intelligence and their ability to assess data and to understand and make sense of it. And they've helped us this year to create our reports and yielded even further insights. So again, I've been studying the findings from Dataloft. In addition to that, we produce a little thing called the Best Estate Agent Guide. I say a little thing. It's we've assessed 9 billion data points in the last 3 years, and we've carried out 60,000 mystery shops. And again, I'm not saying that it's infallible, and there might be one or two of you in the room who feel that we measure the wrong things or we don't take account enough of certain criteria, and you're entitled to your opinion, and we do listen and we adjust. But you can't argue with the scale of the assessment. It's quite extraordinary. And what, again, it gives us is the ability to actually see and understand exactly what is going on at a point in time. So 9 billion pieces of data that Rightmove have analysed, all relating to people who are actively in the market trying to sell or let or move home. So those are the principal sources of information which enable us to have, hopefully, an informed opinion. Doesn't mean we're right, doesn't mean necessarily we're broadly right, but I think we are. And that's why I feel able to say that I think there are 10 important areas that you, particularly those of you who are agents, but a lot of it will apply also to those of you who are service providers to the estate agency community as well. I think there are 10 key things which I'd like to suggest you will need to consider in 2020. Now, some of you have already applied these things. For some of you, 8, 9 out of 10 you'll have already nailed. And if nothing else, therefore, hopefully I'm reaffirming your earlier decisions. But my sense is that for some of you, you might also gain some things and some thoughts around actions you need to take. By the way, I missed out one other source of information. One of the individuals is here today. There are 2 people whose opinion on the lettings market I respect hugely. 2 people who I've worked with for many years, who, in my opinion, both of whom have been absolutely consistently the best operators in the lettings field. One of them, Frank Webster, can't be here today. Unfortunately, one of his parents is ill and he's had to go to visit him in hospital. But Frank Webster, former vice chairman of Finders Keepers, has produced for the Property Academy a copy of, or basically an overview of what he thinks is going to happen in the lettings market. And by the way, I think somebody over on this side asked a question about lettings before. Maybe was it you, Jamie, I think, asked a question about lettings before. Frank's view is very, very bullish, almost more bullish than Roger's. And Frank is not, quite frankly, the most bullish of individuals. So he's very chipper. Also we have in the audience today Peter Fuller. Peter, who used to be the managing director of lettings at Romans, and I worked with Pete from 2006 and watched him build one of the best lettings businesses in the country over many, many years. And he's also been involved in numerous acquisitions and now consults with a large number of lettings firms. And again, Pete's given me some top-line information. Now, all of this we're going to make available to you for coming today. So all of our members will receive it, and also everybody here who's a guest will receive it as well. So you're going to get all of Roger's slides, you'll get all of my slides, you'll get a transcript of what I'm going to be talking about, plus you'll also get the summary reports from both Frank Webster and Peter Fuller in terms of the lettings market. And all of that will be distributed to you within the next week, so ahead of the new year, and a chance for you, therefore, to hopefully digest it further and to put your planning into place. So, without further ado, that's the basis on which I'm making my statements. It's not just a subjective viewpoint, it's hopefully an informed viewpoint. So let's kick off. Oh, I forgot one more, sorry. Boomerang. Another source of data, Boomerang CRM, a business that I have an interest in, therefore I declare a bias potentially. But Boomerang assesses several thousand people who are moving each year, and these are the Net Promoter Scores that they've found, which you'll see here. Sales, interestingly, the Net Promoter Score for sales is 48. That is lower than lettings. That's never happened before. Property management is actually the highest of the lot, which is quite extraordinary stat. Nicky's pulling a face looking at me thinking, is that right? Yeah, Nick, a lot has happened in the 3 years since you left Property Academy. And that's what's happened. And I think that's really interesting. And again, it causes me to feel that we fundamentally need to understand that the whole business has changed, actually. And I think we've adapted better to some of the legislative changes in lettings than we have to the overall socio-economic issues around sales. But more of that in a moment. And our final source is actually also our members. We've just launched this year our members portal, and each month, we've only just started it, so the data is relatively fresh, but we now record all of our members' key metrics. So we look at everything from payroll as a percentage of turnover, average marketing costs, we look at transaction times we look at average fees, blended fees, we look at a wealth of data from some of the very best estate agency businesses in the country. And so again, rather than just looking at the average overall of performance, we're looking at some of the top performers, including several members of our panel today. So again, another source of data that we have. Now, those of you who receive our weekly 4i, and I'm hoping that the majority of you do, and those of you certainly who are members of the Property Academy will be familiar with this model. We call it people, systems, and brand. And we believe that every single aspect of a business can be fitted into one of those three, and it's the output of those three that relates to the financial results. And my sense is, whenever I go into a business and look at a business, I tend to find that, look, every business can improve in all three of those areas. I know the Property Academy definitely can improve in all three of those areas. The thing is, though, at any one point in time, what you often find is that one of the three is going to require a bit more attention than the other two. And it's almost like a spotlight on a dance floor. It sort of revolves around, and the spotlight goes onto one area, and you get that sorted, and the spotlight is now moved to the next area. And what we try to do is to mitigate for that and to help our members to focus on all three areas. So that's what I'm going to be doing again this morning, is looking at actions across all three. But there is one, and it's sort of emphasised up there in terms of people, that I think for 2020 is going to be the biggest issue for many of us. One of them, we have 78 different models that we use with our various membership programs. They're continuously evolving. They've always been refined. Any of you who are on the first summit group 5 years ago will recall that one of the models was the 7 R's of people. It's now been upgraded to the 10 R's of people. And I'm going to be taking you through 3 of them today, which I think are absolutely essential for you to look at in 2020. And the first one is what we call review. Now, some years ago, I worked with Carl Tatler, of the eponymous Carl Tatler business on the Wirral. Carl, in fact, has been a member of ours for many years, and he's joining me and several others in April next year when we go to Blue Sky in New York. And completely unsolicited and completely out of the blue, last September, Carl dropped me a note which was really touching about his experience. And I remember this key point that he made. He said, I remember struggling to understand when you talked about the future organisational chart. You insisted it was essential, and how right you were. It was pivotal to 2 essential appointments and the changing of the guard in terms of my senior team at that time. And what I'm going to urge you to do as your first action is to look at your future organisation chart. Not your current chart, but your future organisational chart. Because I think this is one of the most important tools that you can have in a business to enable and to facilitate growth. What are the future hires that you need to be making into your business? I'm not just talking about replacements, that's obvious. If a manager of branch X leaves and you need a new manager of branch X, that's straightforward. I'm talking about what additional hires will you need to make in order to enable your business to grow. Let me explain how this works. If you take the principal area where you make money, you've got 6. I mean, there are others, but 6, broadly speaking, areas where you can make money. Sales, lettings, new homes, financial services, conveyancing, and commercial. I mean, you can put block management into lettings and separate. You can go more granular, but those are the broad headings. Agreed? Everyone happy with that? Now, against sales, right, these are some of the functions of sales. Market appraisals or listings, buyer and applicant management, seller management, viewings, negotiation, and sales progression. Those are all jobs. Now, back in the day when I started, I was trained in all of those. And my job as a negotiator and then as a branch manager was to basically manage all of those functions, and similarly my colleagues. But over the years, as the business has changed, for some businesses, we've developed specialisms. So we have centralised sales progression. We have people who are dedicated listers and valuers. We have dedicated negotiators who only manage viewings. the dynamic and the structure of the business has changed quite a bit. Even more so if we were to look at lettings. And you see here, you've got the same listings and market appraisals, tenant applicant management, landlord management, viewings, negotiation. But then you've got, in addition to tenancy progression, you've got property management, renewals, safety checks, check-ins, check-outs, rent payments, contractor payments, evictions, and so on. Now, every one of these roles needs to be considered within the future organisation chart. And here's my point, my first point, and it's this. If we're going to see a growth in the numbers of transactions, so whether Roger's data conflicts with other data that you have seen in terms of the total number of transactions, what Roger has said is, regardless of the baseline, there's going to be a 10% increase on the number. So whether that's a 10% increase on 900,000 or a 10% increase on 1.2 million, it's going to be a 10% increase, in Roger's opinion, based on the reasons he's given. And I concur. I'm absolutely convinced, chatting to many of you and speaking also to people as part of the Home Moving Trends Survey and Assessment, there's an awful lot of people who have been deferring moves because they've been waiting to see what happens. I think we've got a very, very strong pent-up demand for people who, I imagine, over the Christmas period will be saying, do you know what? Let's go for it next year. Come on. We've been holding off and we've been putting off this move. Let's go for it. And with interest rates still being incredibly low and forecasted to remain so, even an increase to 1%, crikey. I mean, those of us who have been in the industry any length of time, 1%, yes please, bring it on. I'll take that for the rest of my life. Happy days. So, we're in a situation, I think, where I believe that 10% increase in transaction numbers is a very likely outcome. But here's the thing. Are you able to manage it? Do you have the systems and processes and people to be able to manage it? Even more telling is what you need to run a business these days. So it's not just about the frontline teams and their capacity. It's also the back office functions in order for you to deliver an outstanding service. And if you think about it, somebody in your organisation is responsible for people or talent or HR or call it whatever you want to. Somebody either is or should be responsible for compliance. And let's face it, that's just increasing all the time in terms of its complexity and importance. You've got premises management, marketing, IT, systems and finance. And I've just broken down marketing, and I've probably missed a couple of things at least off the list. But these are all roles within marketing. You've got the actual proposition itself and determining what your brand competitive advantage is. You've got the creative campaigns that you need to develop. You've got all the content. You can read the list for yourselves. And the thing is, with a business, at some point, a business owner starting off, one person running their own business, maybe with a part-time assistant, is responsible for all of these, or they don't get done. And if they don't get done, you will be other than highly effective and highly profitable. If you really want your business to be absolutely soaring in terms of its performance, all of these need to be addressed. And by the way, we have a similar list for each of these different areas as well. So the future organisational chart is about you identifying what needs to get done and then asking yourself a series of questions. Which of these functions that I currently do or don't do well enough should I delegate next? Next, is there somebody in-house with the capability and capacity to do it instead? If the answer is no, can I outsource it? And if the answer is no, or outsourcing is too expensive, then I'm going to need to recruit someone. And what key qualities must they have? So action number one is to create a FOC, a future organisational chart. Basically, no FOC, you're FOC'd. It's a really important tool, and I think it's the fundamental growth tool for your business. And by the way, as Carl Tatler alluded to, it's not simple. Any of you who have worked with me for any period of time, and a number of you in the room have heard me bang on about this, and some of you have had a go at it, and some of you have turned around to me afterwards saying, oh my God, it's so bloody hard, Peter. And I go, I know it's hard. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But it is the key tool for growth, is to understand who you need to employ next to enable you to take on that next level of growth. And by the way, you are going to be under pressure. Your people are going to be under pressure like never before, because I doubt that any of you are carrying surplus personnel at this moment in time. In fact, most businesses have cut and pruned and made sure that they're operating in a very, very tight set of circumstances for very good reasons. But what it means is that with an upturn, we just don't have the pool of resources necessary to manage the increase. And we certainly don't have the overhead, the back office support to enable that to be delivered brilliantly well. Now, action number 2 is what we call the talent map. This is another tool. This is introduced by one of our brilliant speakers, Elizabeth Mills. And Elizabeth guides Property Academy members into a process that she's adapted to enable you to understand where your people are. In simple terms, there's 2 axes here, potential and performance. Now, the middle 3 bands here, basically, if they're in that middle 3 band, what it means is that they're delivering in terms of performance. They're on budget, they're doing their job. If they're down here, they're below budget, they're not doing their job, and here they're exceeding their budget, they're better than their job. And then what you've got, in addition to performance, is you've got on this axis potential. So these people are all, broadly speaking, they've got potential to do maybe a little bit more. These people have got potential to do a lot more. These people basically haven't got potential to do more. That's the basic principle. But the idea of the talent map is then to plot all of the people in your organisation onto it. And you'll see that Sarah is clearly right at the very top, fantastic performance and outstanding potential. And as one of my team members is called Sarah and is sitting in the room, I thought that was a masterful stroke to do that. But I don't employ a Fred or a Hazel, I'm pleased to say. They're the dogs who need to be got rid of. They've got no potential and their performance is rubbish. And why on earth are you employing them? And by the way, Lynn, Joe and Paul, in my opinion, would be on 30, 60, 90 days maximum performance management. And if they don't perform, you get them out. But what Elizabeth has also done is to identify also what is the propensity of somebody to leave. And the purples are those who absolutely, there's no chance at all. They love working in the organisation. They're absolutely wedded to it. They give their discretionary effort all the time. The blues, you don't know. They seem happy enough, but you just don't know. And the sort of yellowy colours, they're the ones who actually you believe are likely to leave. They've given you all the signals. And the idea behind the talent map is to map out on a regular basis, at least quarterly, possibly monthly, because this is very fluid. It moves around. For example, at this time of year, people's potential often diminishes, particularly if they're a single parent, for example, and they've got all sorts of holidays. Summer holidays is a classic one for that. So people do move around, and it's about your understanding why they move around. If you promote somebody, all of a sudden their potential to do more has probably diminished. Oh, and by the way, their performance has probably diminished as well. So you've got to work out where people are, and it's a fluid scenario. But here's the problem. The problem is, at this moment in time, Fred, who is an absolute dog, is as happy as a dog could be and thinks that the organisation he's working for is brilliant and never wants to leave. Right? That's a real problem. Whereas Hazel, on the other hand, has shown loads of signs, probably because you're performance managing her. She showed loads of signs that she's going to leave. Whoopee-doo. But, oh dear, Steve, I'm not sure about. And James, who's right up there in terms of performance and really has more potential as well, cool. He's vulnerable, as is Carl. I've got a problem here. So the idea is for you to, with your future organisation chart, is to track what your future requirements are. It's also vitally important to track where your current people are. And I've learned one key thing over 40 years. It's that not everyone is the same. I had, Sam, I hope you don't mind me saying this, I had dinner with Sam Jones of Moneypenny last night, and Sam's a great friend of the Property Academy and personally, and she's just been promoted to a really, really important role within Moneypenny. And she said to me, not everyone thinks the same way that I do. And I went, well, there you are, Sam. What a surprise that is. And many of us who have started our own business, I think, are quite surprised to find when we employ people that, hang on, when I was an employee, I was no different to how I am now. I'm exactly the same as an employee as I am as an employer. But that's not true of everybody, is it? So the key thing with your talent map is to understand that it's a moving dynamic and people change and their potential changes and their performance changes, and you need to be mindful of where people are on that continuum. So action number 2 is to create a talent map and to make sure that you are, again, recruiting in advance for the roles that not only are going to be expanded, but also to improve and to upgrade the talent that you currently have within the business. Now, recruitment is therefore, Roger talked about earlier, he said his forecast was a 4% increase in terms of salaries and wages and income. Do you know what, Rog? If you're right with that, I'll take that now and bank it. Because I think it could be a lot higher than that. And I think it could be a lot higher in this industry than that. And here's a question for you. Pick somebody in your organisation. Pick a good person currently working for you in your organisation. Imagine they come into your office when you go back on January the 6th or whenever it is you're going back to work, and they hand their ticket in. And they're going. Nothing you can do about it. They're going. They're emigrating to Australia. Nothing you can do about it. Question. Will it cost you, for that individual that's in your mind, will it cost you less, the same, or more to replace them? And I don't just mean recruitment costs. Will their package, the new person's package, be likely to be less, the same, or more? Show of hands, less. Show of hands, the same. Show of hands, more. I think broadly we concur. So I think we've got a real issue here in terms of recruitment. And by the way, Roger made the point about poaching. I think that good people, and the fact that you are in this room, whether you're Property Academy members or not, causes me to genuinely believe that you'll be running better agencies because you're here and you want to learn more and you want to help your businesses to improve. Your people are therefore going to be particularly vulnerable. Because if the marketplace is expanding and growing, where are you going to go fishing? You're going to go and attack the best businesses. So I think you've got a real issue about recruitment. And I'm afraid we no longer have the same talent pool that we used to have. You see, these lot have not been recruiting in number for several years. Actually going the other way. Countrywide, well, we all know what's happened to them. And their team numbers are massively down. Likewise, LSL. They've shut a lot of branches down. And Hannells, I know they shut a branch last week, and I'm not referring to that one office branch, but they've not been expanding for ages. You see, in the old days, what used to happen was the corporates, as they are known, used to bring in all the new talent, train them up to a certain minimum standard, and then the brilliant independent firms would go and nick them. Thanks, Hannells. Thanks, Countrywide. In fact, I'd be. Who here worked at any point in time for one of those big organisations? Yeah. It's funny that, isn't it? They were brilliant training grounds for talent, but they haven't been recruiting, and they certainly haven't been investing in terms of training to the extent that they used to do. So those are the places you can't go fishing any longer because the rivers are dry. You've got to find other sources. Now, this year, God, I'm already in 2020. This year, we went to Seattle for our Blue Sky event. We had a fantastic time. We went and saw Boeing. We visited their headquarters set up. We had a presentation from the past president of Starbucks. We visited Amazon's latest extraordinary retail experience where you basically can pretend to be a shoplifter. Because you just walk in, help yourself, walk out. You don't do anything. There's no swiping. There's no nothing. You just take the goods, and it is really bizarre. But one of the things that we discussed, and James Evans of Douglas and Gordon made a brilliant observation when he said, we have to recruit from outside the industry. We just do not have enough people. And James identified how he has gone about it. He said, I'm no longer the CEO, I'm the CRO. I'm the Chief Recruitment Officer. That's my fundamental job as the leader of the business, is to be the Chief Recruitment Officer. And he shared with us that he has a criteria now for people for a state agency, and they come from one of 4 backgrounds. They're either ex-military. James has found that people with a military background have the work ethic and the discipline and the ability to get things done and to work to a plan and to be structured in their time management and so on. And it's funny because when I used to be sales director at Barratt many years ago, one of the biggest sources of people for us was former armed forces. The second, the people who have acted or currently do at a reasonable level, not necessarily an Oscar-winning level, that would be ridiculous, but people with a background in theatre. I'm not talking about the school nativity play either. I was a sheep when I was 4. No, that doesn't count. I'm talking about people who have been able to adapt to a certain level in terms of their presentation skills and their communication skills and their ability to adapt and to shape themselves to be able to mirror people that they're working with. The third is sports people. I should have probably actually put Johnny Wilkinson up there because James actually played rugby with Johnny Wilkinson. And they're at college together, and they played in the same team. So James played at a pretty high standard, but he knew that Johnny was at another level. So we're not talking Johnny Wilkinson or Joe Root level. We're talking about, though, people who've played at least, say, at county level. Again, because they've had to have the discipline and the rigour. They've also had to make the sacrifices. You know, talent is one thing. We've got this idea, you're not born to succeed, you're coached to succeed. I don't care who you are, if you succeed, it's bloody hard work, right? It's never easy, ever. It's always hard. So again, sports people have this expertise. And then finally, we've got what I call the school of hard knocks. People who've made something of themselves. And those are the 4 talent pools. So what I'm suggesting is this. If there's a shortage of oven-ready estate agents, and there is, and we're going to need more people, you need to go fishing in new ponds. And it requires you, therefore, to onboard people and to train them and to get them up to speed as fast as you possibly can. So advance recruit is the message. Recruit in advance of needing to, as opposed to what so many businesses do, which is recruit after they need to and in desperation. Next is retention. There's no point in recruiting lots of new talent if at the same time you've got a revolving door and people are walking out of it. And I think that actually at the moment you've got to really seriously think about how you look after people. And that individual that I suggested you think about who's going to hand their ticket in the new year, do you know what? If that's caused one or two of you to think, I would suggest on the way home tonight, you pick the phone up and just tell them how much you value them. That's a good starting point. And have a look at their package and ask yourself, what would it cost you to replace that person? And if it's a big gap between what you're currently remunerating them, you might want to have a look at it. Better to retain your people. And by the way, on the retention piece, you need to be making a pitch that is better than anybody else's pitch. Now, Chris Sawyer is here today. Chris will confirm this story to be true. Chris's business, brilliant business in Brighton and Hove, or as we say, Hove actually, has had an interesting situation a couple of years ago. In one of Chris's offices, there was a lottery syndicate. And they all chipped in every week. And the numbers came up. 70 grand a pop, tax-free. You're a negotiator in Hove. You're earning 23 grand a year, 24 grand a year, and you suddenly get 70 big ones handed to you tax-free. And you're 23 years old. What do? Off you go. That's what happened. So I just want you to imagine that for a second. I hope you'll never experience the same thing. But I just want you to imagine it for a second, that it could well be that people are going to be offering, if not lottery figures, very substantial figures for people to move. They're going to be selling their businesses to your people And they're going to be painting a picture of a future that is so rosy and so powerful. So my question is, what are you doing? And you need to basically, again, a Boomerang CRM tool is based on the Gallup 12 questions. You need to be measuring all the time your employee engagement. What is your employee engagement like at any point in time? And this needs to be a continuous assessment to understand how people are reacting. And these 12 questions, we'll send you all these slides and we can expand on this. But basically, one of the key things, absolutely key things, is there is somebody who cares about you as a person at work. In the last 7 days, they've received recognition or praise for good work. At work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. These are really important things for people. And if you're not measuring them and just relying on gut feel, I think you're missing a trick. Okay, so we've introduced as our response really to our members a new program called the Future Leader Program. Now, when we were putting our slides together, Roger mentioned how he had to adapt his slides because of Boris's statements. Just yesterday, I was adapting our slides because I was going to say only 7 places remaining, then only 5 places remaining, then only 3 places remaining, and then George from Daniel Cobb came in and took the last 2 places, and so we've completely sold out. So I was going to plug this really, really heavily. So there's no plug because we're sold out completely. But I've already had phone calls this morning from people saying, but we want to come in. So if we get enough demand, we might launch another one. But seriously, whether it's with us or it's with somebody else, one of the best ways of retaining your people is investing in them, showing them that you care about them, showing them that you value them. And that is really, really important. And the best organisations, and we have some fantastic businesses here today. Moneypenny, for example, one of the world's leading businesses when it comes to people. Their investment in training and developing of people is extraordinary. And it's that, principally, I believe, as to why people stay in that organisation. It's also a key reason why people leave. So if you've cut your budgets back, if you've been sort of holding off investing in people because, to be blunt, you perhaps haven't had the resources to do so, 2020 is when you need to turn it around. And as I say, if it's not with us, then do it with somebody else. But whatever you do, please don't ignore your key people. So golden handcuffs, in case you thought that was something else, Adrian. So let's have a look at systems, because the second part are systems, and systems run businesses. So we all know this chart pretty well. It happens every single year. This is traffic on Rightmove, numbers of page visits. Christmas Day, boom, it shoots up. By the way, there's a myth that Boxing Day is the biggest day of the year. It's not. It's a big spike, but actually it's early in January, but either way, you can see what happens. And my question is, do you have systems in place to cope with it? Because the answer, by the way, as an industry is no, you don't. This is an analysis from our Best Estate Agent Guide. Look at some of these figures. Was your question answered? Only 2/3 of people said yes. Did they ask for your name? Yes. Did they ask for your email? Under half. Did they ask you for how many bedrooms you wanted? Under a quarter. Did they ask you for your price range? Only 1 in 5. It's a staggeringly inept performance. Over half of the web inquiries that we made in the Best Estate Agent Guide, over half went unanswered after 24 hours. Phone calls not being answered. And, if people will buy based on their first impressions. People will buy your services based on how they find you. And if you're not answering the phones, and if you're not responding to web inquiries, right, they're going to draw one conclusion, and that is that you are incompetent.
So how can you have an NPS of 50 with crap service like that?
Well, it's 50 good. And
I've seen worse.
And it's of those, I think once people actually become customers, they do receive a better service. But it's that first impression that I'm concerned about. And it's the loss of revenue that I'm concerned about. And if you look at this situation, we call it first touch. This is our prescription to our members. Number one, just get Moneypenny on the job and get them to answer your phones when you're not able to. It's just a no-brainer. Next, offer live chat. to help to reduce the numbers of web inquiries down so they can be answered in real time on the spot. I think it's a great facility to actually reduce down the amount of web inquiries. And then you need to have a dedicated team to handle all the portal and web inquiries. And if you're a small business with one office, then just do it on a rota system, where every day there's at least one person handling all the inquiries. So we call it a perfect first touch. The next system that you need to be brilliant at is market appraisals. And there's several different stages to the market appraisal process: the booking, the preparation, the appointment, follow-up and review. And again, we have broken each of these down for our members as to what brilliant looks like, what exceptional looks like. But are your systems able to cope with this? Or are you going to find yourself in a situation where you've got ill-prepared valuers dashing out on valuations with not enough preparation done in time, where they're not following up appropriately? In other words, are you going to create for yourselves a really, really leaky bucket? Are you going to create all sorts of problems? And by the way, what you need to be doing is role-playing and making sure that people are trained again in these key areas. On positioning, as we call it, or price, if you want to call it that. On what we feel, the other areas, the fee, the marketing plan, the competitive advantage. I think it's a daily requirement. In Australia, the very best agents on a daily basis are role-playing these key areas. And one of the things that I'm really worried about next year is this scenario. I think we're going to see a massive amount, we already have, but I think we're going to see even more overvaluing taking place. And I think we're going to find agents who are totally motivated by numbers of stock as opposed to motivated by numbers of completions are going to be shooting themselves in the foot by overvaluing properties left and right. And therefore, you need to get really good at being able to have difficult conversations. This is one of the reasons why it happens. This is one of Roger's charts, which he's kindly allowed me to show you today. What you'll see here is, this is from 2005 to today, last month. You'll see here how these prices here, this is Halifax, this is Rightmove and LSL, right? These lines here are Halifax, Nationwide, and the Housing Price Index based on land registry. And look at the gap between the two. And that gap, by the way, has considerably widened from that point in 2005. In other words, there's an awful lot of overpriced stock on the marketplace, which is why 50% of all listings don't sell within 12 months. 50%. But of course, where does a homeowner get their initial price positioning from? They go to Rightmove. Oh, look, it's 300,000. No, it's not. It's 234,000. I was very taken by Adam Kay, who spoke at the Yale Masters. If you were there, I hope you enjoyed his presentation. I found it both illuminating about the health service and very funny as well. It caused me to go off and search for other medical tombs. And what I found was a pattern from all these different books that seem to have appeared. By the way, two outstanding books as well, Atul Gawande's Being Mortal and Richard Shepard's Unnatural Causes, two excellent reads. But what they've done in the medical profession is they've perfected the art of highlighting bad news. I mean, if you think telling somebody their property is 30 grand overpriced is hard, try telling somebody that their child has got cancer. I mean, that's proper hard, all right? And the medical profession have developed ways of actually bringing the bad news. And here's how they do it. Get it up front. Your house is not worth 300, it's worth 230. Now, explain why. Let me tell you why that is, and make the owners see themselves. It's totally understandable why you think it's worth 300. Because look at all these properties on Rightmove, and look at all these other properties that haven't sold. That's why. I totally understand why. However, and then you finish with the good news. The good news is this. That overvaluation that you were led to believe by others is also true on the property that you wish to go on to purchase. And you will be able to purchase it at a more competitive rate. You've got to get your people skilled at doing this. Because too many fudge it, too many say, all right, we'll give it a go, we'll have a try, we'll see what we can do, and end up therefore adding to the problem. So you need to perfect bad news. You need to perfect how to deliver bad news as action number 6. Every year I get challenged on this. Oh, Peter, that's not true. Not in my area. Fees are a big deal. Oh, if fees didn't matter, then how come so many people instruct purple bricks? I never said fees don't matter. What I said is, fees are not the reason why somebody appoints you or doesn't appoint you. They will try and get their agent to be as cheap as possible. But that's not the reason why they select one agent over another. They select the agent that they like and trust the most. And then they try to get the fees down. And our industry is rubbish at holding on to a high fee. Absolute rubbish at it. And that's why we've had a race to the bottom. And what worries me is that next year I'm really concerned that the 10% increase in transaction numbers will allow agents to continue to reduce fees because they're boosting their incomes by volumes. But then if volume numbers decline again, it's going to bite like never before. So we must this year take action in terms of fees. We must make sure that we perfect the fee pitch as well. And in this respect, we've taken a decision to engage with a woman called Janie Smith, who I heard 10 years ago, who's written a brilliant book about creating a competitive advantage. Because what you need to do to be able to charge a high fee is you need to be able to communicate your competitive advantage better than anybody else. Now, these are the top 5 phrases used by London estate agents, according to an article in Property Reporter, and none of them, not one of them, is a competitive advantage. Oh, we work to ensure a smooth process, or we provide a tailored service. It's not a competitive advantage. And those are the top 5 things you'll find on agents' websites. This is a competitive advantage. If you are in the top 3%, as assessed by Rightmove and Property Academy, if you are assessed to be the best estate agent in your area, that is a competitive advantage. You've got independent assessment, independent endorsement of your exceptional achievement. So action number 8 is make sure you have a competitive advantage, and that's going to be a big theme for us at Blue Sky this year in New York. Action number 9, very quickly. Boris's slogan for the election? Get Brexit done. Brilliant. Jeremy Corbyn's or Labour's? Interesting, isn't it? A week later, you don't know, right? Donald Trump? Make America great again. Hillary? Well, here they are. Get Brexit done. Spot on. It's time for real change. Well, that's snappy, isn't it? And on the bus. Make America great again. And look at that. Hillary for America. The point is, you need to make sure that you are communicating brilliantly well. And communicating internally as well as externally brilliantly well what the priority is. I've walked into businesses and seen they've got 10 or more priorities. Ridiculous. There is one priority. There are other things that might be important, but what is your one priority that you need to focus on? And you need to make sure that this is broken down for each individual, and then you must communicate it 4 times in 4 different ways to have any chance of it sticking. So then action number 9 is what we call the 4x4. If you want your people to get a message, that message must be articulated in such a way that they get it 4 times in 4 different ways. You've got to be relevant. You've got to be distinctive. You've got to be definitive. I think perhaps the most important thing I'm going to be doing in my career is helping our members to create what I call a 4.0 customer experience. The first one was 1950s, up to 1950s. People had no choice. They just bought what was ever in the shop. Then 50 to 2000, 2.0 is when brands came into play, marketing. They had access to more branded products. 3.0 was the internet age, where all of a sudden you could go global and you had a vast choice. But it's not enough. 4.0 is all about making sure that you're not only delivering functionally, but you're giving uplifting experiences. You're not just delivering consistently, but you're delivering individually tailored experiences. You're proactive as opposed to reactive. And what I mean by proactive is, if it's happened before, right, you should anticipate it. You should only ever be reactive for something you've never experienced before. Otherwise, you've got a system failure. We've got to massively, massively up our game and give people truly, truly extraordinary service and extraordinary experiences. It's a whole new level of experience that's required, a whole new level of attention, a whole new level of interaction with people and customers, And this industry, I'm afraid, I don't even think we've mastered 3.0 as an industry. You have the opportunity to leapfrog so many people and deliver a 4.0 experience. But boy, you need to have all the things in place. You need to make sure that in this next year, you are addressing all of these, in particular, number 10, customer experience 4.0. So here are the summary of the 10 points. As I say, all these slides will be made available to you. But what I want to do now is ask 4 brilliant estate agents for their opinions based on what Roger's had to say, the observations that I've articulated, and more importantly, what they're going to do as their businesses. So let me introduce them. First of all, the birthday boy, Andy's birthday. Happy birthday, Andy. Yay. Andy is a director of Jackie Oliver. Jackie Oliver, quite an extraordinary achievement. A single branch business based in Towcester, and has managed not only once, but 2 years on the bounce to be the number 1 sales branch in the whole country out of 26,000, which I think is quite extraordinary. So really well done. Ben Brain is a senior director at Hannells. It's a family business. Hannells based in Derby. Again, consistently, year in, year out, is one of the best estate agents. And what I love about the business is it's not a central London or a high net worth Derby. No offence meant, mate. It's not. Yeah, exactly. But you guys do the basics. You do the ordinary things extraordinarily well, which I think is fundamentally about estate agency. And that again resulted in Hannells being the overall winner of the overall medium-sized band and also overall winner for sales this year. So a fantastic achievement and well done. Katie Darlow from Roberts. Katie runs Roberts, a 10-office business based in South Wales. Again, an area that, average house prices not that high in Newport and Ebervale and places like that. Again, just delivers consistently well, beating all the competition year in, year out in South Wales. And then we've got Vicky from Location. Vicky is the managing director of this brilliant single office business based in Stoke Newington. They were number 1 in lettings as a branch, again out of 26,000. And they were number 3 in sales. I mean, just remarkable. So our panel, I think, a really, really first-class group, and thank you very much indeed for your time. So quickly, Katie, first question. What from today, from what Roger or I have said, what's been the one big thing that you're going to do with your business?
I've decided that I'm going to hold a day in January, the very first week back, where I'm going to have 3 time slots, so 9 o'clock, 12, 3, to see everybody in the whole business. And if anybody can't make that day, I'll make sure that they make an appointment to see me that week. Because I don't want to leave this up to the managers to convey to them. And there's so many points that I think we need to make about the first touch, about what they're saying, comfortable that they're saying that. And I want to make sure that I'm the one who's directing them, that we've got a clear picture for the year, where we're headed, to make sure that they're all set up for the year as well.
I love this. My last employer, I am completely unemployable, as you would imagine, but once upon a time I was employable, and I worked for Jackson Property Services. Today it's really sort of emerged as Robinson Jackson, a brilliant estate agency. And Alan Robinson, my last boss, used to have on his nameplate, when he was managing director of the business before I took over, he used to have on the back of the nameplate, "Have I called 3 negotiators today?" And he used to make a point of phoning 3 negotiators every single day just to keep in touch, which was on there. Brilliant. Yeah. Ben, what's been a big thing for you from today?
I think similar points, really. I think particularly with the engagement of the team, we've had a lot going on in Derby the last 12 months. We've had great sales, but we've had massive problems with the council and the searches. It's been 55 working days to get a search back, which has a devastating effect on the pipeline. So the whole team has shown a huge amount of resilience and determination, and the fact that they're still here after all of that, making all those sales after so much hard work and seeing them slip through the cracks because it's been taking so long. And it's sort of taken our eye off the ball as the directors of the business of doing the stuff that really counts. So as we've already talked about, in terms of we've got a great team, and we want to make sure that they do feel valued. And I think you see a lot of businesses now that have space hoppers in meeting rooms and snooker tables and pool tables, but I think it can often be a bit of a facade. And actually, what counts more than anything to the team is the people from the top getting down to the front lines and actually talking to them. And that's something that we've really missed, and I don't want to feel the consequences of that over the next month.
You make a really important point here, which is, the pipeline's getting ever more swelled. We'll add 10% more into those pipelines, and you've got all those relationships to manage. And let's be blunt here, the problem in terms of searches, mortgage offers, surveys, apart from My Home Move, other conveyancers that don't perform as well, you've got issues, and they're not going to go away. So you're going to have more and more people to have to manage in terms of transactions, and therefore more pressure on your systems and processes. Brilliant. Vicky?
We love to train a lot, but I think it's going to be crucial for us to improve, especially for me personally, on the one-to-one mentoring and training. I want to give everybody more of the skills that they're going to need to better conduct themselves in the level of business that we're going to be generating and the increase that everybody's predicting and we're seeing already. So I think the one-to-one sessions are going to benefit everybody massively. So a massive focus on that.
And a one-office business that has got 2 members of the Property Academy. I know you also work with other organisations that come in and work with you and your teams. You've got some of our speakers, people like Pete Wilkinson, coming into your business to work with people. Almost on a daily basis, there's training taking place. And I said before, if it's not with us, then please, please, please with somebody else, because you cannot afford not to be developing your people at this point in time. I think it's more crucial than ever, particularly around delivering that 4.0 experience. That's going to be really, really, really crucial. Andy?
The great thing about anything when we get together with the Property Academy is you come away with tons and tons of notes and things, and it's back to people again. Everything I've written down is to talk to Charlotte straight away when we finish today is about people. We talk all the time about what is our unique offering to the customer. We've got to get right now is our offering to our people, because we're already under attack from competitors trying to take people away. So our legs are going 90 to a dozen under the water to retain our team and give them that compelling reason why we're the place they need to be.
If you're writing your budgets at the moment, do yourselves a big favour, and if I'm wrong, by the way, it just means you're going to have more money on the bottom line at the end of the year. Increase every single element, just for your existing team, never mind future hires, increase your payroll by 7% for next year. Right, increase it by 7%, and you'll thank me at the end of the year for doing so. You're going to see a massive increase. Roger said 4. It's going to be more than that. It's going to be way more than that in this industry. For reasons, actually, I think the lady earlier said, we haven't been doing very much for such a long period of time. And I think a lot of people are going to go, ooh, my turn now, thank you very much indeed. I think I'll have a slice of that cake that's improved. Really, really crucial. But it's not just money. It's about people feeling valued. It's about people feeling engaged. It's about people wanting to champion your message, your competitive advantage. And here's the thing. They're going to be hearing this pitch from so many of your competition as to why they should leave you and join them. You've got to be pitching ever better to your team members to keep them there. What are your concerns, Vicky? You've heard Roger talk about all these wonderful things. We're going to have a boom year. It's great, isn't it? What are the practical concerns for you in terms of what are the roadblocks? What are the things that you may feel, I've got to get over that in order for our business to really capitalise?
I think it's going to have to be delegation from top down. I think as agents, we really struggle giving full autonomy to our seniors especially. And we prepared massively for 2020 this year by upskilling the seniors within our team. So the sales senior negotiators, the lettings one. Oh, it's not sounding very good, is it? So for us, it's about being trained and well prepared to handle our systems and processes and ensure that we're doing everything and delivering everything that we do within our one way. And not diverting from that. Because once you have the one way of doing things and doing them well, and that's what you improve, then you find complete and utter consistency. Yeah.
Andy, you've done it twice. You've managed to get number 1 sales branch 2 years running. What are you going to need to do to get it for a hat trick?
We are going to have to be ready to deal with the capacity issue. Because if we're looking at a 10% increase on transactions, and we absolutely can see that coming, we cannot dilute our delivery of our service and our offering. So, and we are working currently beyond capacity, and it's back to the people again. If we're going to engage with them to work even harder, and they're working, normally you slack off at this time of year, and you go out and you start your partying. We've ramped it up because we know we have to be ready, and we're looking at automation and other things we can bring in to support those people we're going to be asking even more of, but keep them excited about what's going to happen to us next year.
Absolutely. Thank you. Ben?
Yeah, I think as you said in the intro very kindly, one of the things that we seem to be very good at is just working on the fundamentals. So for us, from a leadership point of view, it's having the courage to say, we've got everything we need now, let's really, hunker down and master it. And where I see technology is more as a complement to the people. So it's the people that are doing the heavy lifting, which I know might not be the same as how other people feel about that. But certainly that's part of the reason for our success is we are very people-driven. For anybody that was to come and look at the profit and loss account of the business, the first thing they'd look at is the salary.
Yeah.
But that's what has enabled us to be so successful. And another big issue for us is definitely the pipeline, because we are finding, as I'm sure is the case with pretty much everybody in here, the conveyancing process seems to be deteriorating. And it's been an average of, from the sale being instructed to solicitors to exchange, 110 days throughout the year, which is just crazy. And it's one of those elements where, yes, you can have your own shipping order, but we're finding that more and more people are involved in bigger and bigger chains. So as quick and as efficient as you can be, you are always reliant on the slowest solicitor in the chain. So unless that whole process transitions throughout every agent and every conveyancer, then we're going to have massive pipelines, and the longer sales take to exchange and complete, the more they fall through, and all of the problems that come with that.
2020, what would it be, Vicky?
For me, it's got to be to people. Focus on creating a phenomenal culture within your business. It is crucial that you go above and beyond for your people as well as your clients. So create a safe environment where people feel safe and comfortable to make mistakes and use them as a learning opportunity to further grow and develop. Recognise them, reward them, take an interest in their personal interests. Don't be too worried that they're going to leave you. And just go above and beyond for people.
Love it. It's been attributed to several people, this idea that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and it was Edward Denby who said it first. But I've adapted it, because if you've got a great statement, the best thing to do is to rip it off, duplicate it, and make it even better. And I say that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Right? Culture eats systems for lunch, and culture eats brand for dinner. Culture trumps everything. And if you get the culture right, as Location have invested superbly to do, then that's a big thing. Ben, what's one thing for the audience?
I would have said people, but that's already been taken. So I think would be to have the confidence to invest in, I'll pick another area, marketing. Another big part of our success is that we are everywhere. And particularly in Derby, you don't really see agents invested in marketing. And over the time, you see the results of that. So as you've said, when the market drops, usually the first things to go are training and development and your marketing. But actually, that's what keeps you going. So we're already, we're a family-run business, so we're definitely not as slick and as efficient as a corporate business that has millions of pounds of marketing budget. But it's certainly a part of that is, as you've said, appealing to those amber people. What if you could afford that house? Take the first step with Hannells and let's see where it goes. And
Hannells he's been far too modest. Hannells do a fantastic job marketing. They boss their area, particularly from a community perspective. And Ben himself markets himself really well. If you haven't listened to it, he's got a bloody excellent podcast. And it is. And I applaud you for it, because, again, from an employer attraction perspective, a young man with a podcast interviewing other successful business people, which is what Ben does with his podcast, about what makes them successful. That's the sort of bloke, if I'm a youngster coming up through the ranks, I'd be thinking, well, that sounds like a forward-thinking company. I'm going to be interested in that. So what I like about it is you haven't just focused in on the property market that so many others have. You've drilled into business, and I think you're doing an absolutely first-class job. So well done on that.
Thank you.
Katie.
Kind of mirroring a little bit what Ben said, but to tell your story, and I think both externally as well as internally, because I went to the NAR recently this year, and the whole message was about tell your story. We don't tell the story enough about the houses we're selling, the people who we're selling for. But I sometimes don't think the people within the business even know what we do or what our backgrounds are as well. So I think just general message to my team, I think, is going to be this year, you're telling a story. You're telling a story about the houses. When you meet a client, you give them a bit of your background, because we're all too British and polite to sometimes say, I've done this and I've done that. But it's a much more compelling argument.
One of our speakers actually talks about, coaches how to tell a story, storytelling. He's speaking at one of our events, one of our leadership group meetings in January. So I'll flash up in a second the dates for January. But it's a brilliant session about how to craft your story in a way that's really clear and compelling and motivating for people. And I think articulating that competitive advantage, it's not just having it, it's how do you communicate it in such a way that people go, oh, that's really something, that's really worthwhile. Birthday boy, close us down. What's your one big thing?
I can't talk about people because that's been done to death, but it's the sticky jobs. When we go through a list of the things you've talked about today, everybody in this room will have got one of the things we know we need to fix. And we don't fix them because we haven't got time, and that's the way we can park them so that we don't have to just get on with it. So it's to find that thing you need to fix. We've done one of them. We're working on another one only yesterday. And just stop faffing about and get it and make the time. And yes, it's going to be uncomfortable, but when it's done, the relief.
Thank you. What do you think of these four guys? Show your appreciation for their contributions today.